think it's great it's gone, eh? It was just, to me, it was an eyesore. You know, and the thing is, I've got good memories, and by looking at it, because it had never been looked after and done up, if it had been restored to, even if it was empty, but restored as this was a freezing works, I wouldn't mind it, but it was just deteriorating, windows were being broken, kids, people just go in there and pinch stuff and smash it. So to me, it was the best thing they ever did was clean it up and use the site for something, for grazing, whatever they're using it for now. So no, I reckon it's a great idea getting rid of it, because those days are gone, haven't they? So you come down that main hill into Pātea now, you've got a great view out straight out to the sea and the bay. The memories are good. That's the main thing, isn't it? For me, the memories are great, and you can't take that away at all.
This is a story about some research and how I conducted it and what happened as a result. It's a story and it's a voice, and I ask how typography can carry it. During this research, I've been to Pātea 5 times, and on this journey, I've photographed, I've filmed, and I've listened to people's stories. I was born in England and my family were working class, but I knew what it was like to have your world controlled by a factory. And when I came to Pātea, I recognised something that was familiar. The town of Pātea is on the southwestern coast of Taranaki in New Zealand, and it is a hard, windswept coastline that was first inhabited by Ture, the Māori leader, when he settled here with his people about 800 years ago. In 1883, English entrepreneurs began what is today known as the Pātea Freezing Works, and for 100 years they grew the company. The town prospered, there was steady employment for the locals, and at its height, this factory exported butter, cheese, beef and lamb by the hundreds of tons. In its heyday, the factory employed over 900 people. Its walls rang with the sound of the factory, men working, the railway lines bringing trains with produce from across the country. This was a new world. As the factory prospered, so did the town. However, in 1982, the downturn of the meat processing industry saw the closure of the freezing works, and the doors were shut. The factory emptied, and when the work dried up, the town struggled to survive. The buildings began their slow crumble into redundancy. This project is about people and place, and how they talk about place. And as part of this project, I have interviewed 4 people, and each of them had a unique and deep experience of the freezing works and of the town of Pātea.
I think they wanted to close it. I'll go back a bit. There was a lot of money put forward to rebuilding the place. Plans were out and everything. And if you go over to the museum over there, you might, I don't know if there's anything over there or not. And then Timona, which was part of the vested group, had a fire over in Hastings, and the money that was going to come here was all channeled over there. And it was, and we had a manager come out from England, and he was, him and his cohort, Paul Jones, they decided they were going to close it or beat us. And in the end they closed it. it was a sad day, you know. It was, oh, now what do I do now? Where am I going? What am I going to do?
Oh, I couldn't wait for Monday morning to go to work because the comradeship, you know, I had people from Hara, Kakamea, Manatai, Waverley, Wanganui, Waitotra, all congregated, you know, they all worked at the freezing works, so you got all different insights what guys were doing, and of course I was a sportsman, and some of the boys say, oh, you'd play the shit game on Saturday and say it was winter for rugby, you know, and give me shit. So it was great, I loved it, eh? The comradeship down there, I miss it, to this day I miss it. You know, I'll always, had a great working environment there, eh? And some really, really good friends, eh? Loved it.
When it became quite derelict after it closed, a lot of people wanted it gone and whatever. I've probably always been a little bit sentimental about things. I actually wanted it to always just be there. I could see the dangerous side of it. I could see that it was an eyesore, you know. And when the fire happened down there, I can remember I was probably one of the first people to know because my husband's in the fire brigade as well, and so his pager went off. I read it, and then from our place, which is you know on this main street down the other end of town, I could actually see the flames and hear the noise from there. And I remember feeling really quite emotional about it and sort of thinking it's an old derelict building, but I don't know, it was more than that for me. It was very important. Maybe it was because it was my first job, I don't know, but my dad worked there too, so there was lots of little connections.
I found it very sad because the freezing works was basically the foundation of Pātea, you know, in employment. I think there was up to about 500-600 people employed there. It gave people a good living life, living style. And when the freezing works closed, the families were broken up, people sold houses, had to move out, of course, for employment, and they were left with rotting buildings and PEP schemes, you know, which gave no one any incentive, no money to save. So families started to move out of Pātea, lost contact with the town, and all these memories of all the old men who worked there, who enjoyed their life, etc. Everything was gone now. There's nothing to identify of the place.
These were workers who had lived in Pātea and had made the journey of hope through betrayal and back to hope. So I asked myself, how could you take the beauty and texture of these voices and blend them with type? I could have gone online and downloaded the plethora of fonts, but there was something in the accents of these voices that called me to something deeper. And so I began listening to them and carefully asking, how could typography capture not just the dialect but the emotion and hope? And from this I developed a family of typefaces. The first was Strike, and it was based on the idea of erosion, and it was influenced by John's voice. When I thought about Strike, although striking was something he was talking about, I think he was really talking about the place over time that was struck, eroded and pulled away, and his memory was a place that was chewed up. I started treating the typeface initially by hand. I made it by cutting pieces out of card and wood and placing them on different backgrounds. And then I thought about the damage that was done to the soil from the freezing works over the years. When I discovered how toxic the chemicals had been, and I began to ask, what would happen to soil showing the erosion of soil and the erosion of type? And from here I transported the idea into a digital environment, and I asked, how could I construct a working typeface that could actually become speech. Not a display face for signs, but something that could become their voice. So I developed a family of fonts that could express all the values of a working typeface. The second voice was influenced by Joy, and when I listened to her, I could hear affection and strength, but also loss. But most of all, there was one word she said that settled deeply inside me. It was the word time, and the beauty was, she said the word with a distinct dialect, but she was also talking about being hopeful. So I tried to get this idea of time as being a hopeful thing, but it also had the sense of loss. And again, it wasn't to make a typeface just for a sign, but a voice that could work through different repetitions and different strengths, because all of these people spoke. I saw hope in these people that were still walking the streets, and these streets were condemned to close, because I knew I was taking Joy's voice back to the town, a town that was living, a town that had not fallen apart, but was holding itself together. And so to the return of Pātea, and I arranged and I took this work down to the Museum of Pātea and to the community of Pātea.
And I've been here for about 8 years now, and coming up 8 years for next month. And since that time, we've gone from being a museum, which I suppose is quite an old-fashioned style of museum, where we have open collections essentially, to one that's a lot more kind of thoughtful, a lot more sort of curated, a lot more interpreted, so that we can look after the objects that we don't have on display a little better. So that's sort of where we've come from, really.
The film poems were positioned as posters in and around the town that could be read off a QR code, so the work was both in the museum and around the town itself, so people could activate the film poems through their mobile devices and they could watch the poems in situ in the town. So this was not work for a white-walled gallery, for which there is none in Pātea. This was not work even for the museum. This was work that lived back in the spaces that people lived in.